We are starting a new lesson today. We're in lesson 33, session 1, and I'm on page 717. And there's some important things that I wanted to go over in this learning target right here because we're beginning a new unit on classifying two-dimensional figures. And there's two ways that we need to actually think of figures. And I'm just going to read this right here really quickly. It says classify two-dimensional figures based on the presence or absence of parallel or perpendicular lines. So we're going to look at parallel and perpendicular lines, or the presence or absence of angles of a specified size. Okay, so we're going to classify two-dimensional objects based on lines and angles. And we need to keep that in mind as we're going through this entire lesson 33. When we look at objects, we're going to consider them from the perspective of what kind of lines do they have, and then what kind of angles might the objects have. So right here it says, look at the shapes below. Put a check mark on all the shapes that have at least one pair of parallel lines. So I need one pair of parallel lines, or sides rather. Put a star on the shapes that have at least one pair of perpendicular sides. And explain how you can test your choice. Okay, so we're looking first for one pair of parallel lines. Well, I know that this line here is parallel to this line here, so I'm going to put a check mark. I see in object B, I have a parallel line right here and here, so I get a check mark. I have at least one parallel line here, and actually we know we have two pairs on both the rectangle and the square, but that does get a check. I don't see any parallel lines that don't cross on this number D, but I do also see two sets of parallel lines right here on E, so this one gets a check as well. And then it says to put a star on all shapes that have at least one pair of perpendicular sides. Well, we know that a side is perpendicular when it makes this perfect right angle right here. So I know that this side right here is perpendicular to this side up at the top. So, and again, we're going to put a star on. So I'm going to star this shape because I see perpendicular sides. And now I look at these angles here on object B, this hexagon, and I can see they're all obtuse angles. So they do not create a perfect 90-degree right angle. So B does not have perpendicular sides, but C does. And we actually have 4 right degree angles right here. So I know that C has one. And then on D, I can tell that this angle right here is a right angle. So D has at least one right angle. And then on this object right here, I can actually see that there are no right angles because these are slightly, I have this one is acute angle, an obtuse, acute, and obtuse angle. And I'm on page 718. It says, which shapes have at least one pair of parallel sides and at least one pair of perpendicular sides? Explain. Well, that was shape. So wait, we have parallel and perpendicular. So parallel and perpendicular are going to be A and C. Only A and C. And that's because for a perpendicular line, you have to have a 90-degree angle. They have to meet perfectly, and I'll show you using my protractor that there has to be, actually let me just do my 90-degree angle for you. Make sure that I draw it accurately. Here's my 90. And this is how I know that this is a perpendicular lines have a perfect 90-degree angle. Shapes with straight sides, such as triangles and quadrilaterals, are types of polygons. Okay, so straight-sided shapes are called polygons. There are different ways you can sort these shapes, such as by the number of sides the shape has and by the relationship between the sides. So we can sort them by the number of sides and the relationships between the sides. You can also sort shapes by the kinds of angles. Now the relationship between the sides, that's going to be your parallel and perpendicular. I'm going to abbreviate that, parallel and perpendicular. So which shapes here have at least one right angle? Well, we defined that earlier, and I'm going to go ahead and draw those in. So we know that A, C, and D do. Which shapes have at least one acute angle? Well, angle D has at least one, and then I said that this angle and this angle here on E are acute. So we have D and E, and remember, acute is less than 90 degrees. Which shapes have at least one obtuse angle? B, all of these angles on B are obtuse, and then these opposite angles on E are also obtuse or greater than 90 degrees. Describe the sides and angles of shape C. Okay, well, let's look at the sides first. I know that this, the sides of C, I know that this is one pair of parallel lines and another pair of parallel lines. So I'm going to say for the sides, I have two pairs parallel lines. And again, we're looking at the sides. I have four perpendicular corners as well. So they have at least, we'll say just at least one perpendicular. Okay. And now we're to compare the angles of this shape. So I'm going to look at the angles. I'm going to say there are 4 90-degree angles. And we can also say that means that there are no acute and no obtuse. So this is all we have to discuss before going on to page 419. Now remember, you can always look in your dictionary, in your book, for a description of the word polygon, but it was also defined on the previous page. It is an object with straight sides, and those straight sides have to connect in some way. So nothing that's rounded and no open type of objects as well.